robbery, torture, murder. A ruthless drug cartel would go to any length to protect its empire, no matter who got caught in the crossfire. In the heart of this storm, brave FBI agents and New York City police officers put their lives on the line, diving deep undercover to bring down a vicious drug network from the inside. Back in the 1980s, New York streets were drowning in a tidal wave of cocaine. The chaos was overwhelming. Colombian cartels ruled the drug trade with an iron grip, flooding the city with narcotics and leaving a trail of violence in their wake. I'm Jim Carlstrom, a former FBI field office director in New York, once said. Our agents risked everything to infiltrate these deadly organizations and take their killers off the streets. Cocaine was cheap, easy to produce, and dangerously addictive. Wherever it showed up, violence followed close behind. While most of the bloodshed happened between users and dealers, innocent people often paid the price too. One night, a Chinese restaurant owner stepped outside and ran into a group of desperate addicts. These junkies were willing to do anything for their next hit. The man had gold teeth. They shot him dead in cold blood, pulled out pocket knives, and ripped the gold from his mouth. That's how dark things got. By the late 80s, New York's cocaine crisis had spiraled out of control. According to NYPD Lieutenant Mike Garrity, it was a brutal time. Turf wars erupted constantly. Dealers staked claims over entire blocks. Whenever a rival showed up, shootouts followed, often leaving teenagers and bystanders dead. Crime rates soared. The violence didn't slow down. It only got worse. Every time one dealer was arrested, two more popped up in his place. The only real way to stop the madness was to go after the heart of the operation, the cartels themselves. And so, the Department of Justice formed a special task force focused on dismantling organized drug crime. Known as C-13, this elite unit was made up of seasoned cops and FBI agents who knew exactly what they were up against. Special Agent Fernando Llanos recalls how, in the early 90s, the Colombian cartels had a stronghold on the New York drug scene. The two most dominant factions were the Medellin and Cali cartels. These organizations smuggled drugs into the U.S. through cargo ships, cleverly hiding them among legitimate goods. Customs Officer Phil Spinelli explained the scale of the problem. With container ships, it's surprisingly easy to sneak drugs in. They liquefy the cocaine, seal it in bottles, or press it into domino tiles. Sometimes they even stuffed it into cans labeled as fruit or fish paste. New York, being one of the world's busiest ports, saw around 5,000 containers arriving daily, each carrying up to 20,000 kilograms of freight. The odds of finding hidden drugs in that sea of shipments? Like trying to spot a needle in a haystack. From New York, these drugs were distributed across the entire country. The C-13 task force was determined to break that chain and cut off the flow at its source. They started by collecting evidence, following suspects, and working to infiltrate the inner circles of the cartels. That's where NYPD Detective Richard Eppolito came in. He was chosen to go undercover and dive into the drug underworld. But to succeed, he'd need more than just courage. He'd need trusted insiders. Informants are vital in these operations. If you earn their trust, they can open doors that are usually sealed shut. One of Eppolito's most reliable informants came forward in December 1991 with a name: Eduardo, a man dealing in cloned cell phones who had ties to the cartel. According to the informant, the Colombians were exploring new partnerships with the American Mafia, an organization that had long mastered the tricks of the underground trade. The cartels were looking for people who had deep connections and experience in organized crime. This was Eppolito's chance to get in. To pull it off, he'd pretend to be a mafia member named Tony Romano and stage a drug-related business deal with Eduardo. The informant arranged a meeting and introduced Eppolito to Eduardo under his new alias. Eduardo was cautious but intrigued. He agreed to the meeting, but not without a warning. If this was a setup, someone would pay the price. Undercover work is one of the most dangerous assignments in law enforcement. If you're exposed, it's not just your life at risk. Your informants will be lost too. That's why every meeting is carefully staged, with backup watching from a distance. Agents are posted inside and outside, and everything is planned down to the last detail. The safety of the undercover officer is always top priority. Eppolito met Eduardo at a bar. The team monitored everything. Agents were inside, pretending to be regular customers, while others watched from nearby. In this world, you can't just come out and start talking about drugs. You have to ease into it, build trust, play the long game. So Eppolito started small. He told Eduardo he was interested in buying clone cell phones, devices that could tap into someone else's mobile service without them knowing. He said he needed them for his own business. Then he paused. "Let's not rush into the drug stuff," he said casually. "I don't even know if I trust you yet." It was a clever move, a psychological test. Eduardo liked the cautious approach and agreed to sell the phones for a price. After that meeting, the task force dug deeper into Eduardo's background. It turned out he wasn't a major player, just a courier, but he had connections, and that made him useful. The phone deal was just the beginning. Eppolito was about to take the next step. Following a successful phone deal, Detective Richard Eppolito decided it was time to take things further. He arranged another meeting with Eduardo, but this time they'd talk drugs. When working undercover, it's crucial to maintain a believable persona. You have to become the character you're playing. Eppolito couldn't rush it. If he suddenly placed a big order, Eduardo might get suspicious. That kind of misstep could be fatal. So they agreed on something modest, a 1-kilogram sample cocaine. Eduardo delivered. That alone hinted he was more connected than they initially thought, possibly even tied to a real cartel. Agents followed him after the handoff to see where he went and who he interacted with. If Eduardo truly had links to a major drug ring, this was their chance to trace the chain upward. They soon noticed a couple frequently coming and going from Eduardo's home. Investigators hoped to identify them. Every detail mattered when you were dealing with cartels that operated under strict codes of silence. Meanwhile, the task force tested the purity of the cocaine Eduardo provided. It came back extremely pure, 90%, a clear sign that it was straight from the source, untouched by middlemen. That kind of quality meant Eduardo wasn't bluffing. He had access. This was the first real breakthrough. Eduardo could lead them deeper into the cartel. Eventually, he set up a new meeting. This time, it wasn't just with Eppolito, it was with someone far more important. A woman involved with the cartel who used the name Monica. In this world, no one ever gives their real name. As Eppolito met Monica, agents observed everything from a distance. One of the women entering Eduardo's home earlier matched Monica's appearance. Now, they were making progress, identifying key players. Eppolito stuck to his character. He told Monica he could smuggle drugs through the port of New York. Nearby, another man appeared to be watching the meeting closely, possibly security for Cartel. That wasn't unusual. According to Special Agent Fernando Llanos, cartels always took precautions. They were smart and always watching for threats. The meeting was a cautious introduction. No decisions were made yet, but Monica was intrigued. She proposed another sit-down, this time with her partner Willie. After Monica left the restaurant, agents discreetly followed her. A traffic officer performed a fake stop to get her ID. They learned her real name was Rocio Londano, and her partner was Gustavo Valencia, a.k.a. Willie. Both had deep ties to Colombian drug cartels. Now things were heating up. The task force officially opened a full-scale case and looped in U.S. Customs to support the investigation. Phil Spinelli, a customs agent, confirmed that Willie's alias matched a known associate Pablo Escobar. In fact, he was rumored to be a distant cousin. Escobar, the infamous Medellin cartel kingpin, was known for putting bounties on police officers and eliminating anyone who crossed him. If Willie was truly family, this could be the break they've been working toward. He might lead them all the way to the top, but with that opportunity came extreme risk. Going deeper undercover meant Eppolito had to fully become Tony Romano, the seasoned mafia man with insider knowledge of how to move drugs through ports without getting caught. The stakes were rising fast. To be convincing, Eppolito had to master the role. He wasn't just pretending. He had to know the logistics, the lingo, and the risks of international smuggling. The cartel would do background checks. Any cracks in his story could get him killed. So the authorities built him a complete fake identity. Tony Romano now had a full criminal record and a believable backstory. Everything was designed to match what a real mafia associate would have. They couldn't take any chances. The story of Special Agent Enrique Camarena, who was captured, tortured, and killed in 1985 after being exposed by a Mexican drug cartel, was a constant reminder of the dangers. For Ippolito, a single misstep could mean the same fate. To protect him, they wired Ippolito with hidden microphones to record conversations during meetings. Up until that point, no one had tried to frisk him, but in this world, that could change in an instant. Carrying a gun as a gangster? Normal. Carrying a hidden mic? Much harder to explain. So, he leaned into the role. He wore expensive jewelry, drove flashy cars, and dressed like someone with power. He met again with Willie, whose position in the cartel made him a tough one to fool. The higher up you go, the sharper their instincts. They've survived this long because they know when someone's lying. The cartel grilled Ippolito during their meeting, trying to figure out if he was a real deal. The task force listened in from a distance, ready to intervene if something went wrong. As part of the illusion, agents even posed as Tony Romano's bodyguards, shadowing him like loyal mafia enforcers. During the conversation, Ippolito told Monica and Willie that he could bring drugs to the port of New York and stash them safely in a secured warehouse for distribution. Customs agent Spinelli explained that's exactly what the cartel needed. Someone with inside knowledge of how to move product through shipping containers without raising suspicion. After the meeting, investigators tailed the cartel members and noticed something unusual. They were purposely low-key. No flashy cars, no gold chains, no designer clothes. According to Special Agent Llanos, this was intentional. They didn't want to draw any attention. They were laying low, possibly because they had already made mistakes and fallen out of favor with higher-ups in the cartel. It turned out Monica and Willie owed the cartel money. A lot of it. They had lost a shipment and were under immense pressure to make up for it. The cartel had made it crystal clear. Pay your debt or die. That desperation played right into the task force's hands. People under pressure take bigger risks. And Monica and Willie were eager to climb their way back into the cartel's good graces. By staying close to them, Ippolito gained more access to the inner workings of the organization. He worked to record every conversation, every shady deal, building a case brick by brick. Because they had spoken openly about drug deals, police got approval to tap their phones. What they heard confirmed everything. Monica and Willie were calling back to Colombia, updating the cartel on their meetings with Tony Romano. They vouched for him, assured their bosses that he was trustworthy. That kind of endorsement opened even more doors. Then came a new development. A higher-ranking cartel contact wanted to meet Tony Romano. Just when Ippolito thought things couldn't get more intense, a new figure stepped onto the scene, a woman named Magola. She wasn't just another connection. She was a blood relative of a notorious drug lord known as Ivan the Terrible, a man linked to the murders of at least 19 police officers. He was feared throughout Colombia, known for his brutal tactics, and even rumored to have a personal torture chamber on his estate in Bogota. Now, Tony Romano had to win her trust. Magola arrived with muscle-armed bodyguards, and Ippolito immediately spotted one of them packing heat. He had a tough decision to make, call in backup or ride it out. He chose to stay calm. If he called for help too soon, the entire operation could collapse. His team was on standby, listening from a nearby hotel room. If things got ugly, they'd storm in within seconds. But in undercover work, every second counts, and a wrong move could mean the end, not just a mission, but for someone's life. So Ippolito went all in. He knew the street game well, how gangsters talked, dressed, and acted. All he needed was a rough script, and he could improvise the rest. During the tense meeting, Magola's associate Sami sized him up. He was known in cartel circles as the agent detector, a specialist sent to sniff out undercover cops. His job? Root out fakes. If he didn't believe Ippolito's story, it wouldn't end with a polite goodbye. Sami didn't buy in easily. He applied pressure, trying to break Ippolito down and expose him. Agents monitoring the room were ready to storm in at the first sign of danger. Sami grilled him. How many people have you killed? Who've you worked with? Tell me something real. Eppolito didn't flinch. Instead, he flipped the script. Look, I'm not here to hand over my life story. Maybe you're the cop. Ever think that? I don't have time for games, he snapped. Then he held out his hand. We're doing business, or I'm walking. Your call. Tense silence followed. Sammy turned to the others, furious, muttering in Spanish. No one knew what would happen next. But then, Sammy cracked a smile. He shook Eppolito's hand. Let's make money. Eppolito had passed the ultimate test. And just when it seemed safe to exhale, Sammy pulled another trick. He wanted to interrogate the informant who first introduced Tony Romano to the cartel. This was dangerous territory. The informant wasn't a trained agent, just a civilian. If he broke under pressure and exposed Eppolito, it would be game over. Sammy dragged him into a side room. The agents had wired it for sound, listening in case they had to crash in and save him. It got ugly fast. Sammy demanded the truth, threatening him, pushing him to betray Romano. The team outside braced for a worst-case scenario, but the informant stood strong. I won't turn on him. Ever, he said. If I do, his people will kill me. That loyalty bought the team another win. Sammy respected it. He popped open a bottle of champagne and called it a celebration. Crisis avoided. For now. The deeper Eppolito went, the more complex and dangerous the game became. The cartel wasn't just testing his story anymore. They were planning to bring him fully into their world. After weeks of negotiations, the cartel's higher-ups sent in another major player, Fernando Eno Sanchez, a powerful figure within the Colombian drug network. He didn't come just to talk. He came with a vision, a permanent drug route from Colombia to the United States, operated in partnership with the American Mafia. That's how much they trusted Tony Romano. The plan was bold. Eppolito would receive drug shipments directly at the port of New York, move them into a secure warehouse, and keep everything running smoothly from customs to street-level distribution. Everything would appear seamless, handled in-house. Eno was thrilled. This kind of setup promised massive profits and minimal exposure. But then came a curveball. Eno asked Eppolito to fly to Colombia to inspect a cocaine shipment himself. It was the ultimate loyalty test and a trap. If he went, he'd be deep in cartel territory, alone and without backup. If he refused, they might suspect he was a cop and kill him anyway. So Eppolito played it cool. He told Eno that his mafia business in Atlantic City had him swamped and that he couldn't leave the country just yet. It was a gamble, but it worked. Eno accepted the excuse for now. Meanwhile, agents monitoring Eno noticed he was meeting with another high-value target. Mauro Restrepo Trujillo, a known trafficker wanted for smuggling and laundering drug money. Although the team wanted to arrest him immediately, they held off, knowing that moving too soon could ruin the entire case. Then came the signal. A massive shipment of drugs was on the way, but it wasn't cocaine. It was a test load of 9 tons of marijuana. Eppolito was irritated. He'd asked for cocaine, but he realized something important. 9 tons was more than enough to prove the cartel's involvement. That amount was unprecedented. Most test shipments were just a few kilos. When the container arrived in New York, undercover agents moved it to their secured warehouse. The drugs were hidden under fake clothing shipments, sealed and intact. Customs officers carefully opened the container without breaking the official seals, so everything still looked legit. Inside, 272 boxes, nearly 1,000 kilos of high-grade marijuana. Street value? Over $21 million. That kind of volume could only come from a major cartel. Still playing his role, Eppolito invited Monica and Willie to inspect the load. Everything was recorded. He cut open the packages in front of them and showed them the goods. It was all there. But then he made a bold move. You lied to me, he said. You sent marijuana, not cocaine. That's not how this works. I want 5 tons of coke, or you're not getting your weed back. Monica and Willie panicked. The drugs were their ticket back into favor with the cartel. They pleaded. Monica even offered her own child as collateral, an unthinkable move that chilled Eppolito to the bone. He realized how far they'd go and how much danger he was truly in. He didn't budge. The deal was off until the cocaine arrived. Behind the scenes, The task force began planning the takedown. The case was solid. Now, they just needed the right moment. It came on February 3rd, 1993, over a year after the operation began. Eppolito invited Monica and Willie to his fake office, outfitted with cameras, microphones, and hidden agents. The couple walked in, thinking they were finalizing a deal. Instead, they were surrounded by law enforcement. "Hands up! Police!" agents shouted, storming the room. They were stunned, completely blindsided. Then Eppolito revealed the truth. "I'm not Tony Romano," he said. "I'm a cop, a detective, and you're under arrest." Monica, in tears, begged him to explain. "How could you do this to us?" He didn't waver. "You came to this country, smuggled drugs, and ruined lives. I'm here to stop that. This is justice." Within 24 hours, the FBI launched coordinated raids. Eno and others fled to Colombia, but many, including Eduardo, Monica, and Willie, were arrested and charged with large-scale drug trafficking. They all pled guilty. One major figure, Mauro Trujillo, managed to escape. He remains a wanted man, and the FBI continues to ask the public for help in locating him. But thanks to the bravery and precision of the C-13 task force and the unwavering courage of Richard Eppolito, the operation delivered a crushing blow to one of the world's most dangerous drug cartels. It was a year-long mission, filled with close calls, deception, and raw adrenaline. But in the end, justice won.